it's got tits for an engine, it costs lots of money.
Yeah, and I've got both. So it's fucking well expensive. I can't find bras that fit, and I can't keep an engine running. Hello and welcome to the Idle Chat podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Callum and this is Adam.
Hello.
Today we're going to talk about the real cost of drifting, the nitty gritty, the heart of the matter, the question that we get asked individually more than anything else.
Oh yeah.
Everyone wants to know what it costs to run a car like this, what it costs to get into the sport, and what it costs to use your car once you've built it. So
yeah, as well as the personal sacrifice.
Yeah, the commitment, what it truly takes to enjoy this hobby of ours. So strap in, make sure your missus isn't in the room.
Yeah, oh God, yeah. Yeah, make sure, if you're watching this, make sure that you listen to it, probably on headphones.
Make sure we're safe and trusted people.
Yeah, yeah.
That you haven't lied to about how much your hobby costs.
So, on this week's episode, we're talking about the real cost of drifting. Now, it's a question that we get a lot, particularly I get a lot. It seems to come up more than anything else. So we're going to discuss it. We're going to go through a bit of info on our own experiences of what it costs to run a drift car. That's from the building of the car to the ongoing maintenance, to the usage, so tyres, fuel, events, that sort of thing. We're going to speak from our own experience, but we are going to interject a little bit of stuff from what we know. So from competition aspects and from different genres of drifting. But obviously we're not experts on high-end competition. Let's put it that way.
There's not a lot we do that's high-end, as you may have already gathered.
Yeah, an E34 and an S15 that I built in a shed with a mate probably isn't high-end competition. But actually, to be fair, there's some nice bits. I've done DY but dirty there. Dave Yandel, obviously you've done some good stuff.
Yeah, other people have done high-end work. Yeah, it's us that struggle.
Yeah. But yeah, we're going to talk about the real cost of drifting. Now, Lucy, Megan, if you're watching, they're our partners by the way, please turn off now. Yeah. Or just skip to the last 2 minutes because you're not going to want to hear.
Like the maths on this.
Yeah, the maths isn't going to be mathsing very nicely for you. But we're going to be honest, we're going to be truthful, and we're going to give you our general overview. So we're going to start with Callum because Callum's car is more entry level, or budget, should we say, or budget friendly. Still not necessarily cheap.
No, it wasn't quite as budget friendly as I was initially anticipating.
No, I'll build a cheap drift car and go and have some cheap fun.
It got out of hand again.
Yeah, escalated somewhat. We could say that. But
that's the true cost of drifting, scope creep. Whilst I'm there, that's the real cost of drifting.
We mentioned it in the last podcast that I could just, or maybe I should, or I could do this, and then
that often snowballs to a much emptier bank account than you initially anticipated.
Yeah, a bank account that wasn't exactly plush is now
much like the bottom of my car. It appears to have holes in it.
Yeah. Your car is a bit holy.
Yeah, but that's why it's budget,
and it's lighter.
Not with me in it.
Well, you got to make up for your weight somehow. So no sills.
Yeah, weight bias, isn't it? So I came from the 32, as we spoke about in the previous podcast, which was certainly not an entry-level car, and decided that I was going to get back into drifting cheaper, in a more enjoyable car with less financial input.
You can't laugh whilst you say it.
No, I know. But I certainly was in less input than I was previously. However, so we started with a base car. I bought a base car that had a few modifications onto it in the effort to save some money and time.
Yeah, we went through those in the last podcast, and a lot of those modifications actually turned out to not be good modifications.
Yeah, a lot of them went in the bin.
No, a lot of them went on eBay.
Well, yes, they did, yeah. So I'll talk real numbers with my car. I paid £5,400 for that car in the end, I believe.
Yeah, I'm going to write this down, just so we've got record. I will burn it afterwards.
Please don't show my wife. I started with the base car, £5,400. That had HSDs, it had a hydraulic handbrake already fitted, had an oil cooler already fitted, extreme single plate conversion clutch, because they have a dual mass flywheel standard, which are prone to fail, and a CAS two-way diff, which but didn't go well in the end. But so that was the base car we started with.
Which, to be fair, pretty solid spec.
Yeah, and on paper, ready to go. Needed a bucket seat putting in it, and we head to the first drift day. Now, unfortunately, scope creep really is real, as we've already said. And I thought, well, I'll make it a bit better first. Mainly aesthetically to begin with. We'll start with the aesthetics.
Yeah.
So I brought it home. I had the wheels left over from the R32. Well, we can include those if you would like to, but they're probably...
so just be clear, they're SSR.
SSR Agalstruce,
Yeah.
18 by 10 ET 4 on the front, and 18 by 12 ET minus 7 on the rear. Fully polished splits.
Big boys.
Big boys.
Yeah.
I would say they would probably be 2.5 grand's worth of wheels.
We'll round it up because you've got tyres on that as well.
Yeah, true. I did buy a pair of Union Raws for it actually.
There you
as well. That went on the front of it.
So we'll go for 2.5.
So we'll say 2.5 grand there. So we've quite quickly...
So you've spent half of the car's total value
on wheels.
wheels.
Yeah, but in my man maths, I didn't spend the money because I had them in the shed already. So it's money already spent, so it doesn't count.
Okay.
You'll begin to see a pattern that I am perhaps a little more frivolous than I should be with building cars. Definitely on things that don't matter, like wheels.
We'll come to the panty dropper button later.
Yeah, no, we don't need to talk about that. So yeah, I started with wheels. They didn't fit because, funnily enough, they never fit anything. I built an entire Skyline around them. They were one of the first things I bought for that as well, and they didn't fit that either. So then I needed 20 mil of front spacer to get them to clear the brakes.
Yeah.
So my 18 by 10 ET minus 4s became 18 by 10 ET minus 16, which is disgusting.
Yeah, that's a big wheel.
Yeah, it's a very big wheel. That then led to the issue of needing camber arms to get them under the arches. Now in a 350Z, I don't know who's doing the pricing on suspension parts, but they need to give their head a wobble.
It's a bit leery.
You can buy a front upper camber arm for a 350Z off eBay if you'd like to die, but it's £100, £110 for an upper camber arm. It's made of twigs and hopes and dreams, and the first time you put any load on it, it's going to snap in half and kill you.
Yeah.
And then the next just gentle jump up the ladder is £750. Now coming from S bodies and R bodies, where all the arms are sort of 200 quid.
Yeah.
Give or take.
Well, just backtrack a little bit. I had a 350Z track car for a little while. I don't want to admit that, but I did. And it had gravity camber arms.
That's the problem. Gravity gets a hold of them and bends them.
And they were very Chinese. And I had to, basically, I made them work by setting the camber to 3 degrees and then welding them because the threads were knackered. So
the threads were pulled out of the box.
They were knackered from new. So
you still strapped them on your car and took it around the track though?
I welded them together and then took it on a track because I didn't trust them.
Yeah.
So there are some cheaper options, but what you're saying is if anything half reasonable is money.
If you want to do it vaguely properly, and well, not even vaguely properly, if you want to do it properly and it's actually going to be reliable and work on the track and put up with a little bit of aggro, which you're going to give it a lot of, you have to spend a reasonable amount of money. And these are only GK Tech arms. They're not Voodoo 13 like the billet ones. They're like £1,400 for an upper camber arm, which is obnoxious. So yeah, I bought some of those, put some camber on the car. That then got my wheels to fit, and then 350Zs for the size of car they are. I don't know why I keep pointing at this because this definitely isn't a 350Z.
No, but you can keep pointing at it. It is red.
Yeah. Because in my head I still own a cool car, so I'll just keep pointing at this one.
Same colour?
Yeah, same colour. That's about where the similarities end, unfortunately. So 350Zs, for the size of car that they are, have appalling lock. From standard, they are not even that easy to park, to be honest. They really do not have a lot of steering angle. Obviously, being a drift car, you do need a lock kit. I would argue that most beginner cars need a lock kit. They don't need Wisefab, but they do need a little bit more than standard lock, because otherwise you're going to spend the whole day pirouetting in a circle, getting frustrated that you've run out of lock, and that's why you're spinning.
Yeah, I mean, you can get away with grinding the bump stops off and fitting rack spaces.
Yeah, you can.
To be fair,
that's probably where I would start.
That's probably the entry, and that is cheap.
And that's literally, you could make it with a bit of
Tube.
shed 40 tube and cut yourself a couple of 5mm shims.
Yeah.
And the lock stops on the 350Z bolt out, unbolt.
Oh yeah,
so
they do. Yeah,
you just wind them out, you cut them in half, or just wind them out, chuck them in the bin. So you could do it that way. I can vaguely drive, so didn't feel the need for no angle. Wanted some.
Yeah.
Bought a GK Tech bolt-on lock kit. That was about £300, I think, there or thereabouts.
That's not too bad.
I think it was used, but brand new in the box. I think they're about 400 quid brand new. So bolted that on. I didn't need anything to go with that. Everything came in the kit, so I didn't need any different tie rods or anything like that. So that was the front done, suspension wise. Went to the back, and again we came to the whole 350Z suspension arms are extortionate problem.
Yeah.
They, again, really, for what a camber arm and a toe arm on one of these, if you go for something semi-decent brand-wise, is 180, 200 quid per arm. For a 350Z, it seems to be like 300 or 400 quid. I don't really know why, because I don't understand why the same factory can't make them with a different jig. But for some reason, the 350Z stuff just seems to be a bit heavier priced, and I'm coming from a Skyline, so where Skyline tax is a real thing. But so I found Tarmac Sports, which is a British company that specialises in 350Zs. They make their own arms, and to be fair, they're quite reasonably priced. They come with a eccentric bolt replacement, so you get rid of the eccentric bolt that you have in the standard arm to provide the half a degree of adjustment that you need to get a standard car to point where Nissan wanted it to point.
Yeah.
And I think they were about 200 quid each, but they were literally the only option that was that price point. Everything else was sort of 50%, 70% more than that. And that was everything really done mechanically, suspension wise. I did, whilst I was chasing a bit of an axle tramp problem, so on my car I did change the diff bushes and subframe bushes.
Yeah. Did you fit the brace?
Yes, diff brace, So I changed the subframe bushes and the diff bushes. They were a couple of hundred quid, I think, again, and a disgusting job to do. Adam's very correct. 350Zs, for some reason, for the weight of the car and the torque that mighty VQ produces.
That Renault V6.
No, it's a Nissan-derived, Renault-derived Nissan
Definitely
V6.
not on a Spas engine.
They used it in the GT500 in Japan.
Did they?
Yeah, that was the base. I mean, there was nothing Renault left in it, I shouldn't think. But they decided in their infinite wisdom to mount the diff on a single stud in the rear. So what happens is the first time you give it a clutch kick, the diff tries to twist out the subframe, and over time, eventually cracks the rear casing. So GK Tech make a bolt-in diff brace that picks up on 2 of the bolt holes on the back cover of the diff. It's like 5 minutes to fit. They're the easiest thing in the world to fit. I think they're about £120.
They are, yeah.
So
I fitted one on our track car.
Yeah. And they are literally 5 minutes. It takes you longer to get under the car than it does to bolt it up. And they pick up on another hole that's pre-cut in the subframe already. So
easy.
Bolted that in.
Must do.
Yeah, an absolute must do. And I bolted that into my 2-way diff that I didn't need at the time. So we reclaimed some money when I eventually stopped spending money trying to chase a problem that wasn't there and realised it was the diff. I sold the 2-way out of the car for £700. So that was...
How much?
That 700 I got for that. I know. Damien's listening as well. He said he listened to the first podcast. So.
Oh, did he?
Yeah. So
how's your diff?
And he bought the diff and it's going in his S14. But... yeah, sold the diff at the car. I bought a diff off you, I believe. You had a spare 350 diff.
Yeah, so in my own 350...
Or did I buy it, or have I still not paid for that?
I don't think you paid for it yet. So in my own 350Z Saga, I had one came in part exchange, to be honest with you, with the dealership. We didn't pay a lot of money for it, and we said, we'll have a summer of fun. And I took it up the road, and it sounded horrific.
It sounded like it had a straight cut gearbox in it.
Yeah, it was alarmingly bad. The bloke had been driving it 40 miles each way per day he was a plasterer and used it as a van, which is a bit.
And also, if anyone has ever opened the boot of a 350Z, you've got room to put some sandwiches in and a pair of shoes, and it's full. So it's the worst van ever. I don't know why anyone would use that as their van, but this guy did.
So anyway, I bought a diff, and because obviously that was what I thought was making the noise.
To be fair, it's what it sounded like.
It sounded like
it
this.
was horrendous.
Yeah. So I fitted this new diff, took it up the road. Noise is the same. Oh, God's sakes! I've been sold another dodgy diff. So I went on eBay and mouthed off the poor bloke.
And you really did kick off at him as well.
Mouthed off the poor bloke that sold me the diff. Ordered another diff, so I put that diff in. It still sounds the same. Like I'm on diff number 3 here, and it sounds the same. I'll just check the wheel bearings. Turns out it was the wheel bearings. So I was 3 diffs in to a diff that was fine.
Yep. So, I also have had diff issues, so must be a 350 thing.
So changed the wheel bearings, which were like 45 quid, and mint. And then Callum had one of the diffs that I think the bloke that I actually mouthed off on eBay wouldn't take his diff back, which is fair. So I think enough. You ended up with that diff.
Yeah, I bought that diff off you. I took it to work.
Which was a low mileage diff, actually.
It was, yeah.
Until you put a load of...
It doesn't sound very low mileage anymore. Yeah. So I took that to work and hit it with the hot glue gun, welded that up, put that in the car. So I think it was a couple £100 I gave you for that diff, or I need to give you.
I think generally a 350Z diff is about 200 quid.
Yeah.
150, 200 quid.
Yeah, which in contrast to a diff for one of these is fantastic.
That's great news. You can buy welded diffs, to be fair, for these for 400 quid, 300, 400 quid. But you're not buying a two-way for 300 or 400 quid. No. We'll come on to
that. So put that in the car. So now we have basically all the basic recipe to go drifting. There is nothing left there. Seats.
And harnesses.
It might shock you to hear this, people, but I struggle to find seats that fit me. So much so that my Sparco Sprint Ls, they are large, again, steady, hope you sat down. My steel frame bucket seats at some point were actually a bit snug, so I put a bottle jack in them and opened them up to make them fit just that bit more comfortable. You want to feel at home in your vehicle.
They are custom. Sparco seats.
Yeah, it would be cheaper to just eat less, but sometimes we can't all have what we want. So I'd saved those from the R32 because I figured there was probably no one else in drifting that needed a bench bucket seat big enough to fit their family in.
Church pew bucket.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm the only person that sits in them tight. No one else, everyone else has got room for everyone to get in.
Yeah.
So I kept those out of the 32. They're cheap seats anyway. I think I bought one new for the 32 and it was about £180. So call it 300 quid in seats.
Yep. Bottle jack.
Yeah, the bottle jack is a bit expensive, but hopefully you know someone that's got one.
I'll forgive you.
Yeah. I bought China's cheapest seat rails, whatever eBay had at the time.
Because safety is not important.
Safety is not important. Safety is very important, but I'd been told already, and well, no. I'd sat in the vehicle, obviously, because I bought it and driven it home, and I sort of sat on it and in it. And I'm only 5'10". I'm not particularly tall. I'm just very wide. But I still had my head on the roof in the standard seat. So, and I also like to sit very low in a car. I like to sit with my shoulder beneath the window line. No one else likes sitting in my cars because no one else seems to be able to see out of them and find them comfortable.
Yeah. But
that's how I've found them to be comfortable. The 32 was the same. So I knew I was going to have to modify whatever rail I bought anyway. So I bought the cheapest one, so I at least had a template for the mount locations into the car. And I think they were like £80 for a pair.
Right.
So they really were.
They are dangerous. Cheap. Very dangerous.
Yeah, they are cheap.
You've put your life in the hands of Mr. Wan.
Yeah, and his Mighty Mig.
And his Mighty Mig in
China.
China.
And they were literally made out of like
Chinesium.
12mm wide flat bar that didn't fit the car either. So they weren't actually any use. Well, they were used to me, but
not really.
They needed a lot of help.
Yeah.
So I modified those to fit very heavily. They really, chopped bits out of the car and everything to get the seat into the car and where I wanted it.
Yeah, so on a 350, particularly on the driver's seat, I found this with our track car, you have a big old hump, which means you can't get the back of the seat down.
To sit as low as you want to.
So you have to either massage
Yeah.
or cut that hump.
Yeah, I cut it.
Yeah. It's all right for left-hand drive people.
Because for some reason it's only on the driver's side on a right-hand drive car. I don't actually know what it is.
It's something to do with like an exhaust or something like that, cat hump or something, but it's a nightmare.
Yeah, it's a pain in the backside. But anyway, got those in. So they literally cost me the purchase price. I kept the harnesses from the 32 as well. They're Driftworks 4-point harnesses, so they're I think they're about 120 quid each when they're new. So I kept those. To mount the harnesses nicely, I bought a harness bar. I bought that used off like a Facebook page, like a 350 Owners Club page, which is a hell of a place in itself.
There's some people
love a spacer in there. They love a spacer. They list spacers as a modification, and that's about the only thing that they list on their modification list. But anyway, bought that. I think that was 150 quid, I think, roughly. That bolted in. So that gave me somewhere to mount my harnesses. So now we've got, I kept the steering wheel out of my other car as well, but the car already had a steering wheel boss in it and a Nardi.
To be fair, you don't need a steering wheel.
You don't need a steering wheel. The standard one's fine.
Yeah.
I just did it because I could.
Yeah.
So that is everything at that point to go drifting. There is nothing left there because it already had a hydro mounted in it.
Yeah, it did.
Already had an oil cooler, had a clutch, although the clutch isn't mandatory, but already had an aftermarket clutch.
So the things that I've got written down that we haven't covered, but this is, to be fair, specific for your car.
Yes.
We've got map. Now, you'll be able to explain this better than I can.
Yeah.
On the stock mapping, they only give you like, you can't left foot brake, you can't...
No, you can't left foot brake. If you... they have what they call a throttle smoothing. So because the car's drive-by-wire, to make the car easier to drive for the average person and to make it smooth in first and second and I believe third gear, the throttle map is a bit different. So when you go full throttle, the throttle body doesn't go full throttle. So that's part of what gets mapped out.
Yeah.
Left foot braking is something that you can turn off in ECU when you do the map. You can get around that by cutting pin 101 to the ECU, but it will put an engine management light on. So you can just switch it off in ECU if you're having the car mapped, but you don't have to. The other thing you have to do in a 350 is in the center console, there's a gyroscope which controls the stability control and the traction control.
Yes.
Now, there's multiple ways you can go about this. You can unplug it. You can wire in, there's a kit that you can buy where basically you can have it on a switch.
Yeah.
And be able to control it that way. I just unplugged it because...
It works.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah. And there's no repercussions from it. And I also modified the ABS fuse. There's like a twin shared fuse by the battery. You snip the ABS side of it because the other side does the ignition on the same fuse.
Yeah, you don't want to be snipping that one.
It's weird. I don't know why they're in the same fuse, but they are. Snip that out, so I've got rid of the ABS as well. So my dashboard is now a Christmas tree, and my car is ready to go drifting.
Would you like to have a guess at how much you've just spent?
No, probably not. I would...
This is
Is this including the wheels?
This includes the wheels, but this is not including the map, the cats.
Yes, I did do that.
Yeah, the kit, the spoilers, all the paint. So this is just to get a car. Okay, we could forgo the wheels.
You could take the wheels off.
Yeah, all right, we'll take the wheels off because that's a personal thing.
Yeah,
and Callum's an idiot.
And they're expensive personal things.
So would you like to guess, without the wheels, just for the car, to ready to go, how much you've spent?
I don't know. In my head, I've spent about $6,000, but...
You're not miles off.
No?
£7,600.
Okay. And I bought a car that was probably a little more expensive because it had some pieces on it.
So
I would say you can pick a 350 up, and I see them semi-regularly for sort of 2.5, 3, if you wanted something that wasn't a particularly nice road car, which mine also isn't. But
That's exactly what you ended up
yeah,
with.
it's what I ended up with. That wasn't what I thought I was buying, though. I wish I'd done that. That wasn't what I thought I was buying.
You can pick up 350s for $3 to $4 grand.
Yeah.
For something that's all right, got a few bits on it.
Yeah.
It's not completely rotten, but not mint, and maybe has a few little gremlins.
Yeah.
But you're not worried about the windows not working and stuff like that because it's a drift car.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're looking at somewhere in the region of £6,000 to £8,000, depending on how Larry you go and how nice of car you start
To
with.
get you on track and to get you started.
Yeah, yeah. Now on top of that, we've got a few other bits and bobs.
Yep.
So do you want to go through that?
Yeah, we can go through that.
Yeah.
So this got us to the point where we were ready to go drifting.
On fancy wheels.
Yeah, on fancy wheels. I had money in my pocket still because I'd sold my Skyline, and I thought, well, whilst I'm here, so I put a Koyo radiator in it. I could have put a Mishimoto. I could have put an unknown internet radiator in it, but I thought I'll put something decent in it because I wanted the car to be able to be hot lapped. Basically, the idea of this car was was hassle free. So got a big Koyo rad in it, and I put the biggest one they did in it as well. They do an extra thick core, so that was, I think that might have been £400. And do you know the worst thing about Koyo? £400, you get it out of the box, you go to put it in your car, you go, wow, that looks nice. Where's the radiator cap?
No way.
They don't come with a radiator cap, and they're £30.
30 quid.
Yes, they are. Yes. So for your 400, but your Jap speed for 120 quid, that comes with a cap. Your 400 quid Koyo, you can pay me for the cap. And you've got to put a Koyo cap on it because you've spent all the money on a Koyo radiator.
Well, you don't have to, but it's...
Well, no, but it feels like a bit of a kick in the drills if you don't.
It's a bit of a move, isn't it?
So yeah,
Not
so
a good
thank
one.
you for that, Koyo. You've really monopolised the radiator cap market.
Well, the Koyo radiator cap market.
Koyo, sir. Have you included my sump plug?
No, I haven't included the sun plug.
So whilst we're on the expensive caps, I wanted a magnetic sump plug because, as we said earlier, it's a French engine and I expected bits to be floating around in it.
And you have a past with metal in engines.
Yeah, I've done it before. Although that was all brass, so the magnet wouldn't have helped me really.
Not really, no.
And I don't think Powdercoat's magnetic either. So
We didn't have a chance to find out.
yeah, we didn't find out. So I thought I'll buy a magnetic sump plug, and then this is when I still had money left over from the 32.
Yeah.
So I thought, well, I'll buy a nice one because you don't want a rubbish sump plug. People will think you're poor.
I mean, we'll have a Chinese seat rail here, but we won't buy a Chinese sun plug.
No, I bought a Gredy one, and it was £65. So it was actually technically almost more money than my seat rails.
The thing that keeps you in the car, keeps your seat tethered to your vehicle, was £15 more than your sun plug.
I do regret some of my decisions. Not all of them were optimal. But yeah, I mean, that's probably not part of your average basic build.
No. So
Or entirely necessary. Not necessary in the slightest.
only if you can them.
Only if you're me.
But at this point, we're now on to your car. So we've addressed that 6 to 8 grand gets you in a spec 350.
350, yeah.
In the UK.
In the UK.
I don't know about America. I know they're fairly cheap in America.
They're more expensive than they are here,
Are
I
they?
believe.
I know in Japan they're going up.
Yeah, because
a lot-
people want to use them for Ibisu.
Yeah, people are going to Ibisu going, I'll buy a JZX. And then they're going, yeah, no worries, it's £15,000.
It's more like
and
20.
It's hanging.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's £15,000 and it's a compact.
Yeah. So then people are going, and then your other options are really limited. So I know 350s are creeping, not in the UK though.
No, they're not.
They seem to be...
They're probably, this is another kicker, they're probably dropping since I bought mine because the tax is quite steep.
So this is something you need to be very careful of. If you're going to do the old street drive, daily,
With a
drift
350,
car, with a
this
350.
is very important.
Yeah.
So they made them from
learned this.
2003 to 2009, I believe, maybe 8, end of 8. In 2006, the EU changed their emissions laws, and at the time we were in the EU, so we changed our tax laws to accommodate that for our road tax.
Yep.
If you buy one from 2003 to the end of 2005, they're about £300 to tax for the year.
Mine, I think, was 290.
Yeah, 280
something like
to
that.
300,
Yeah,
something like that.
Mine was an 03.
I think the changeover is actually the middle of 2006. So I did the right thing and bought a late 2006 car, which basically has exactly the same engine. They have the same engine all the way. They don't have exactly the same engine, but it's a 3-litre V6. It's almost identical through the generations. From the middle of 2006 onwards, it's like £840 to tax for the year.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, £840.
That now my sump plug doesn't look so expensive.
Well, no, but it's not really a good thing to offset it against.
No, it's not great.
No.
So so that is something you need to be aware of if you're going to have it as a road car.
Yeah.
Because that does add up, and it's not a car you're probably going to use a great deal on the road. I did 2,000 miles in mine last year.
You have to budget about £70 a month.
Yes.
Just for road tax.
Yes. Yeah, that hurts. Yeah.
There's no nice way of putting that.
No, there isn't. I did 2,000 miles in mine last year, and 1,000 of those were to Doryfest and back. So
yeah,
I did don't do the maths on that, please. Yeah. I don't want to know how much that cost me.
We'll skip that bit.
But yeah. Anyway, on to building cars.
Yeah.
So from here on, I got a little bit.
We got a bit
excessive.
Callum. Yeah, we got a bit Callum here.
I have a habit of I want to do things right, but I go about them a bit arse backwards sometimes.
Yeah, and sometimes you do stuff and you think you've done it right, but then you've not quite done it right.
No.
And then they're not quite doing it right. It means you've got to redo it again.
Yeah.
And then it costs
I didn't have too many of those on this car.
No, I remember on the 32, the fuel lines.
Yeah, I had 3 goes at fuel lines on that car.
That was a kicker.
Because I tried to save money and not do them with AN lines. And then that didn't really work because I still used braided line. So then I did them with rubber lines. And that didn't work because I bought eBay rubber line and it fell apart. So then I did them again with AN lines and I finished them just in time to break the car. So
I don't think you.
I never drove on my AN lines. I got the car running again on my AN lines, but I never drove it on them.
Now, if you can avoid AN, if you're on a budget, avoid it because it is real spenny, real quick.
If you're right on that balance, just do it. Just do it in AN. Get on with it. Well, the cheaper way isn't better.
Either stay with stock lines, which, to be fair, I have until last year.
I had no stock lines in my car. That was part of the problem.
So keep it stock. If you have to go to AN, then do it. But for God's sakes, do it once.
Commit.
Do it
properly.
Right. If not, it ends up costing you, instead of £150, it costs you £500.
Yeah, I probably was about £850 into fuel lines by the time I'd done it the third time.
Yeah.
Anyway, wrong car.
We'll
on to the 350. Yeah, this was whilst I was chasing my diff issue, or my power issue. So on the road, we started not doing illegal activities on the road because they're not okay.
Yeah.
We tested the car on a private facility.
Yes.
We actually. We did take it to Norfolk Arena for one night.
You did some quick laps.
I did the fastest lap that night.
But no.
The only thing I smoked was my clutch.
Yeah.
Because the tyres wouldn't spin.
No.
And after 3 laps of that and nearly catapulting myself out of the seat because it still had the standard seating at the time.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it's quite a lot of mass to hold on your arms to stop yourself flying across the car on a leather seat. Yeah. I decided to go home with my tail between my legs. But I obviously discovered that the car would drive like it was on semi-slicks. Like you could spin the wheels in first. Mm-hmm. The second when you then hooked second, the car bogged and straightened up and just went fast. Well, as fast as a VQ can go. So I was adamant it was down on power because the internet had told me that these are an out-of-the-box drift car. Yes. You weld the diff, off you go. That's basically all everyone says on the internet, which is why I bought one.
Yeah. Which you can do.
You can do.
It would be scary.
Yeah.
Because you'd be all over the place.
Yeah, it's floppy.
But you can do it.
You can do it. So I was adamant this one must have a power issue. So where did I begin? I replaced a load of sensors.
So we started by going to a man who works at Snap-on and saying, please help us diagnose this issue.
Yeah, we did.
He said your lambda sensors aren't great. Callum looked at the price for lambda sensors and went, they'll be fine.
The irony is the car's currently sat not running properly with a bad lambda sensor.
So he did tell him right. And then you said, you'll map it.
Yes, but before I mapped it, I said, I'll put a plenum spacer in it.
Yes.
Because that's just kind of go-to mod on a 350Z to make a little bit more power.
Yeah.
And I said, if I'm going to map it for, I think it was something like £500 or £600.
Yeah.
I'm going to do the decats as well before I go because perhaps it's got a clogged cat. That was my other option because they do sometimes fall apart. I changed both of those things and the car developed a misfire. So rather than going any quicker. So I replaced some cam sensors with some ones off Amazon that someone told me were good.
So we went to Norfolk Arena, which, as we mentioned in our last podcast, isn't necessarily the performance epicenter of drifting.
No.
We could call it that.
It's entry level.
It's entry level. And there's some guys there ripping in 350Zs.
Yeah.
And we said to them, what cam sensors are you using? And they said, oh, just these ones off Amazon.
They're £19 for two.
And you went, excellent.
And I went, fantastic. I've spent £60 on a sump plug. I need to save some money somewhere. So I put these cam sensors in and the car immediately developed another misfire, but in a completely different point in the RPM range.
Also important to note, Callum previously mentioned earlier that he bought the later model, the 56 plate. Now, if you buy the 56 plate, be warned.
It's called an uprev.
Yes. Be warned, it comes with 4 cam sensors.
4 cam sensors.
The previous model, the 2003, 2004, 2005 car,
the DEs.
The DEs comes with 1. No, 2.
2. They have 2. They have a cam and an exhaust.
You have half the sensors, thus half the issues.
But for your 4 extra sensors, you do get 6 more horsepower.
6?
For your 2 extra sensors.
Yeah.
Well, I don't because mine never works. But
how much is a genuine cam sensor?
A genuine cam sensor is £100.
Yes. So for £200, you can have 6 horsepower.
Yes. So I fitted some Amazon sensors. Turns out they weren't good. Who'd have thought it? At this point, I rage quit, phoned Jez at Horsham Developments because there's basically only 2 people in this country that map 350s.
Yep.
He was closer. And I drove to Oxford to see him with a misfire all the way and a straight through exhaust, which was god awfully loud.
Yeah, don't do that.
No, that was horrendous. Drove down there, put it on his dyno. He said, oh, the misfire's gone away now, so we'll do some dyno pulls.
Yep.
Did some dyno pulls. I made 11 horsepower more, I think, than I'd rolled in with. He said, thank you very much, sir. That'll be £500 or £600. I said, oh, brilliant, thank you. Can't believe power's so cheap. I drove home, got to the first private test area, and it did exactly the same thing again. So at this point, with the decats and the plenum spacer and the sensors...
How much is the plenum spacer? About 100 quid?
There's plenum spacers, a couple £100, I think, for the kit.
A couple £100?
Yeah, we're sort of well on our way to sort of £1,000, £1,200 into this problem.
And the cats? Or decats?
The decats were £250, I think.
But you sold the original cats?
I sold the original cats, but I can't remember how much for.
They're worth a couple £100 each.
A couple £100, I think, total.
So technically, you made money.
Yeah, I didn't make any power, but I did make some money.
Made more noise.
Yeah. So I phoned around I spoke to everyone on the internet that drifted the 350 in this country, and they all said, I don't know what your problem is. My car will spin 335s at 10 psi. And I'm like, well, mine won't spin anything.
At any PSI.
At any PSI. And spoke to Jake again, and he said, I told you, you're an idiot. They don't work with a two-way. Try a welded diff.
Yeah. I happen to have one of the diffs, as previously mentioned.
So I chucked that in the car, and all of a sudden, it felt like I had 50 more horsepower. The car did second gear drifts on a private test facility, no problem. And would chirp into third, which before it wouldn't even acknowledge. So that was that saga. We left the welded diff in.
Yeah, we're on a mix of Amazon and normal sensors.
Yes. Yeah, bear this in mind for later.
This will come in important, yeah.
So then I built a quieter exhaust. That was a couple of £300.
Yeah, I think you bought the back box, but then you just sort of made it work.
Yeah, I bought a Greddy back box. Actually, I paid £100 for that back box because it said Greddy on it. We've got an issue with Greddy, haven't we?
Yeah, there's a theme here.
Yeah. So that was probably a couple of £300 by the time it was in. Bought a really expensive Y pipe for it from America.
Oh,
Henko Auto Labs high rise Y pipe, which is a really, really nice piece.
It is beautiful.
It's
Google
really
it.
Nice
It is really, well, you'll put a photo in.
I'll put a photo in the video. But yeah, it's a really, really nice piece of engineering that I bought from some guys in America that actually drift 350s regularly and run them very low. So
Yes.
there is an issue with them where the standard Y pipe placement is and the standard cheap Y pipe you can buy aftermarket hangs really low. It's always the first thing to hit the floor.
Yeah.
It cracks the manifolds. It tears the exhaust off every time you try and get on and off a trailer or you fall off the track. And I knew I was going to want to run the car fairly low, so that was an expenditure that wasn't necessary, but I did it.
Just cut to the chase. How much was your Y pipe?
And my Y pipe was £500, I think. Yeah, so that was... But I stand by that was £500 well spent, because that was a very nice piece.
It is, to be fair, of the money you've spent, that piece of engineering and that exhaust is really, really nice.
Yeah.
And if you're going to run your car really low and use it on the road, then it does make sense. Because if not, you'll be cracking manifolds and causing other damage, and it will cost you £200 or £300 to fix that anyway.
Yeah, and I bought the resonated version, so it has 2 resonators in it to try and quiet the car.
Yeah, you bought a load of boxes as well.
Yeah, so the car, if you ever hear my car, you won't believe this, but it's got 2 resonated decats, it's got a dual resonated Y pipe, it's got a mid box and a back box.
Yeah.
And it's still too loud.
It's probably 100 kilos of exhaust.
Yeah, it's far too loud.
It's still loud.
So yeah, we did that.
Yeah.
I then got into some styling things.
Yes.
So we put some GK Tech mirrors on it.
Oh yeah.
About £100, £120. They're off a G37, they're not off a 350. You have to drill the mounts and bolt them on.
But when you do your takeovers, they look great.
Yeah. I bought a body kit.
How much was your mirror, sorry?
My mirror's about £120.
Yeah.
I bought a body kit from a company in this country. I'm not going to endorse them because they couldn't run a bath, let alone a business. So they're not getting any sort of shout out on my
To the
watch.
100 people that will watch this.
Yeah, and if you have any idea about these cars, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
But I bought a body kit. That was £700, I think.
Ouch.
Yeah. But it did fit really well when it did turn up.
Yeah, and it is a nice looking kit.
Yeah, and it is a nice looking kit. But I bought that. I bought a really expensive roof spoiler from America. Oh, it wasn't really expensive actually. It was a couple of £100, I think.
Yeah. What about over fenders?
Over fenders were Tarmac Sports ones. They were about £200 or £300. The rear boot spoiler was £130.
Yeah.
Because that's a Blitz copy. I think that was everything really for the car.
Well, the only two things I've got, paint
Yeah.
and cam sensors, question mark.
Yeah, well that was sort of later when we started using the car. Well, started trying to use the car anyway.
Paint, so luckily, through work, there's a body shop literally down the end of the road.
Yeah.
And he's a pretty good lad, to be fair, and he said, give me some cash. I
some
won't name the company so it doesn't get into any VAT issues. But I think it was about £300.
Yeah. Plus materials.
Plus materials.
Call it £600.
Yeah.
And that is cheap, to be fair.
That is cheap. That was for a
cheap.
full door shuts, full respray, the whole lot.
Whole car.
Took all the lights out. Actually, to be fair, you wouldn't know that car wasn't red unless you open the engine.
Yeah.
The bonnet.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah. So that's basically where the car sits now.
That's where the car sits. Cam sensors.
Cam sensors. Yeah. So we took it to Doryfest. It broke in the pits. Bought more cam sensors. I think I got an absolute stonking deal on those. I think they were like £50 for about 20. Because they were used, they were unknown.
Yeah, we did.
But they did save the day.
To midnight, the other side of Scotland.
Yeah, we did drive to the other side of Scotland for them. But that got the car running.
Yes.
So at that point, that's everything that's really on my car. To have it looking nice, be ready to drive, and be a capable drift car. And it is a capable drift car when it works.
So if you want like a stylish 350Z, I suppose you could call it that.
I'm probably not going to like this number.
That's gonna the anticipation. I can slow down a bit if you want.
No, it's okay.
So we've got 700 for the kit.
I'm sure
300 for the overs.
People watching aren't that interested in math.
Probably not, but I'm nearly there. Harness bar, Koyo rad. Oh, that Koyo rad's disgusting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Some
disgusting as them paying for the cap.
Oh, mate. Would you like to hazard a guess, sir?
I think I'm north of 10. I know that much.
Considerably north of 10.
Okay. I probably don't want to know then. Go on, hit me with it.
I've quickly added this up, so it might be a tiny bit out. I've got £14,095.
That's good. I've also forgot to tell you about the £300 oil temperature gauge.
Oh, yeah.
This was another one of my purchases. And I'm sure there's a couple of other bits and pieces that I can't remember.
So I've just thought of another one.
Go on.
I forgot it now. The oil cooler.
The oil cooler. Yeah, that was already on the car.
Oh, was it? Okay,
yeah, that
fine,
was on the car when I
fine.
bought it. But they're about 200 quid for that kit. So yeah,
Okay.
so 14 and a half grand then.
So the story with now there are a much cheaper oil temperature gauges available.
Yes, they are.
You can get them for 50, 60 quid and they'll do the job.
Yeah.
But Callum's a special guy.
I wanted a nice one. So it integrates into the standard vent in the door and it looks really nice.
It does look cool.
It's great as well because when you're drifting, it's exactly not where your eyes are looking. So it's of no use to you on track. You have to visually look down into your door card to find the number that you want to see. And normally it's far higher than you want to see it.
And we're in Norfolk and I think we made it to about, I don't know, Scotch Corner and it stopped working.
Yes, it did, yes.
Yeah, it did stop working.
Yeah.
So that's not ideal.
No, not ideal. So yeah, an entry-level car is sort of 5 to 7 grand, isn't it? Is what
We said 6 to 8.
Okay.
Yeah, we said 6 to 8 to get you into a 350Z with circa 300 horsepower with a welded diff, bucket seats, coilovers, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
You've spent £14,395.
Yeah, I have done that. But it looks nice, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Which is good because it doesn't work as much.
And
as
to
I'd
be
like it
fair, we previously stated, if you didn't watch the last podcast, which you should have done, that you were nigh on £50,000 into the R32. So you wanted a cheaper drift car and you got what you wanted. However, for 350s, that is a bit spenny.
It's far too expensive. It doesn't need to be that painful.
No, that is genuine. I have.
Yeah.
Yeah. You keep looking at it and you're not.
Yeah,
liking
I know.
it,
I don't like it.
Yeah.
It's a bit painful to hear that because the good thing is though, the car's probably worth about 5.
It might be worth 6.
Yeah.
After this, it might be worth 7. Who knows?
If you take the wheels off it, so you take 3 grand off, well, 2.5 grand off that.
How does that keep going up?
I don't know. What did I say? 2.5?
You said 2, then you said 2.5.
Yeah, I'm trying to make that number smaller though, so now it's gone up. We'll say 2.5. So
if you take the wheels off and put something on a bit more...
You're still at 12 grand, aren't you?
You're still at 12 grand, yeah. With no wheels, you're at 12 grand. Which...
And they're pretty shit with no wheels.
They don't go very well with no wheels. Which is a lot of money.
And at the moment, it's also broken and needs about another 500 quid to work.
So...
But that's kind of... You can't really price that in. That's part and parcel.
So what's broken on the...
O2 sensors. You're going to be shocked to hear cam sensors.
Really?
Yeah.
Your Amazon cam sensors and your midnight Scottish cam sensors haven't done it?
No, they haven't. And I need some suspension bushes, the standard ones.
So you can add £1 grand onto that, is what you're saying?
If you wanted to. Yeah, well, you could. But I wouldn't factor that into your build. That's a maintenance issue.
Yeah.
Or lack thereov.
Yeah.
Now I've squirmed for a bit.
Yeah.
Let's play this game with you.
So that's a wrap for this. Right. So putting it bluntly, there's too much to go through. We'll be here for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So
to be fair, that took longer than I expected.
Yeah. I don't know how long that was, but that was quite a while.
Yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. Apologies. But I'm going to run through this a bit more brief.
Yeah.
And then we're going to go into a little bit on what it costs to get you to a drift day and to actually use it. And then an idea as to how much it would cost you if you wanted to compete at a higher level.
A high level, yeah.
So this is going to be quite a long podcast, apologies, but you can skip it if you don't want to listen to this bit, or carry on listening if you're
Or it might be eye-opening if you're looking at getting into the sport.
Yeah, it might put you off.
It may well do.
But at least we're being honest.
Yeah.
So, S15. Now, obviously, as you know in the last podcast, I got into this car at a time where they were very affordable. But we're going to do it on today's price, and I'm going to be straight up with you. If I had to pay today's prices for an S15, I wouldn't have an S15 because I cannot afford to build this car to this spec. At one point, this car owed me, rolling with a roll cage, with a bride bucket seat, with a harness, literally put an engine and gearbox in it and go, it owed me about £2 grand. So these days, a rolling shell, a good S15 rolling shell,
8, 9.
I think that's fair. I think 9
for a solid, clean shell like this it is.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Now, I'm going to have to be a bit more brief. So we're going to, rather than
Yeah.
go into the specifics of this turbo and this manifold, we'll just say like
We'll say a package.
A package.
Package
exactly.
prices.
So you can stick SR if you're, or
I don't know, they are pretty spicy.
They
A
are.
good one's good.
Yeah.
A bad one's terrible.
If you want a stock manifold, bog stock SR package in the UK that makes 300 horsepower on a whatever plug and play ECU,
Basically,
you're going to be $5,000 probably.
Probably 5 to, if you include a gearbox, probably 5 to 6.5, depending on what clutch it's got in it and a few other like little variables.
Yeah.
For an unknown used, not a brand new built engine or anything.
However, I'm not that guy, so I have an RB.
This car's a little different.
I have an RB. Now, I don't really know how to conclude this because I already had the RB that I paid 1,200 quid for.
Well, we'll say as if we were building this car.
Right, so if you're going to have to buy an RB, as we said last time, you're looking at $4,000. I mean, you can pick them up cheaper, unknown, online, like a Neo, RB25 Neo.
But from a reputable dealer in this country,
you're talking $4,000.
Yeah, minimum.
Yeah, you're going to send it to DY because he's the guy, really, and he's going to probably hit you with a bill of somewhere in the region of £8,000 to £10,000.
Yeah,
if I'm honest,
for a properly built
engine.
That is money well spent as well.
That includes your trigger kit and stuff like that, and cams and like a lot of that is parts, pistons, rods, But that's what you're going to be looking at. So if you're talking 4 for an engine, and we'll go in the middle, 9,000 for the engine build, you're talking 13k for
a long block
for the engine. That is, as Callum said, the long block. Turbo setup for let's be honest, you're only going to want a 6-boost manifold.
Or a Walton.
Or a Walton. They're the two best
Something
ones.
high end.
In the UK, there's some good ones in New Zealand and Australia,
there's a couple
stuff
of
like that.
Fantastic stuff.
So for a turbo, like a Pulsar and a wastegate and a because you're going to want an
sort
external
of 400
gate.
quid on a wastegate, 700-800 quid on a turbo.
Yeah.
Up to $2,000 if you go for Garrett, or depending on what brand you go
We'll keep it in the middle. We're not going to go because this car isn't a full crazy money no object build. This is a, believe it or not, budget built S15. So if we go with a Pulsar is going to be £1,000. A manifold's going to be 1,500, 1,200.
About 1,500. I think.
Yeah, for a decent manifold, and then
about 450 quid for a good wastegate.
And then you're going to have a downpipe made, unless you can make it yourself.
Yeah.
And an exhaust of some description. So we're going to 500 quid for a downpipe.
By the time you've done a screamer pipe, a downpipe, and a full exhaust, I'd say you're well into $1,000 if you're going to fabricate it.
Then you've got to factor in water line for your turbo, all the lines, stuff like that. So you're going to be another 500 quid in AN fittings, lines.
By the time you've done power steering, coolant lines, oil lines, turbo lines.
So we're talking 4,500 for the turbo setup. On the cold side, so this car only runs literally an eBay Greddy planning, which is like 150 quid. It runs, so one thing you don't want to cut costs on is injectors. No. I've seen many people say, oh yeah, I'll use these whatever ones and then melt a piston.
Yeah.
Do not cut costs on injectors. You'll be a real sad panda if you do. A good set of injectors. So I run Injector Dynamics in this ID 1050Xs, I think they are.
Yeah, they are.
I think they're about 120 quid an injector.
I feel like they are.
About 120 quid.
Strong money.
Yeah. So you're talking
maybe even a bit more than that.
Please bear in mind
these are ish.
So 720 for injectors, which is a lot, but could potentially save your engine.
Your tuner will thank you because they come with great injector data that can be applied straight into the ECU, which makes setup a lot nicer. And
then on your fuel setup, you're going to have a fuel rail, which is going to be 200 quid, something like that, to run those injectors. And then you're going to want, I ran stock lines for a long time, to be fair, and they were absolutely fine. I run the stock fuel tank, which is fine, and I ran a 450 litre Walbro in-tank pump. So a very basic system. That is not going to cost you a lot of money.
No, it's probably 150 quid on a fuel pump.
Yeah.
I would argue it's probably not the optimal setup because you've got fuel source risks there with the single pump setup.
And I ran a fuel pressure regulator as well.
Yeah, you do need a good fuel pressure regulator.
If you want to go for the numbers that this car is, 600, 700, 800 horsepower, somewhere in that region, you're going to have to go for PTFE lines.
Yep.
You're going to have to go for obviously AN fittings to run
Or
with
at
that.
least ethanol safe lines.
Yeah.
I know Radium do a set that are not PTFE, but they are ethanol rated.
Yeah, and you're going to have to obviously then run all the associated AN fittings, and the AN fittings do add up real quick.
They really do.
So I also run, as mentioned previously, flex fuel in this car. I'm not going to go into the details and ins and outs of that, but it's a nuke flex fuel bypass.
High flow sensor.
Yeah, with a sensor. And then that goes to an AEM fuel pressure regulator into the rail, and then obviously into your engine. So through your injectors into your engine. So all that, you're going to be minimum £500 on hoses and lines.
Fittings.
So that's 500. Then you've got the Frenchies. So I run a Frenchies in-tank twin pump setup.
Billet top hat.
Billet top hat, which is brilliant. Drop in, off you go, and 2 full 50 wall bros. So the wall bros are 300, and then you've got the Frenchies Performance. I can't remember how much it was. I know
It's not cheap,
it's not cheap.
but it is quality.
Yeah,
It's
and again,
a lovely part, really nicely made.
Yeah.
And makes the install lovely and simple as well. And
Yeah.
the wiring.
yeah, and it comes with clear instructions. Like you don't have to be a genius to work it out. I want to say it was about 700 quid.
Yeah.
Shipped
not
from New
cheap.
Zealand. So that's 1,500. Fuel pressure regulator 250.
Yeah, 250 quid, something like that.
And then we'll stick 150 quid on for miscellaneous stuff we've not thought about. And then very finally, your flex fuel sensor. The sensor is about 150 quid.
Yeah.
And then the nuke bypass thing is also about 150
Yeah,
quid.
so another
300.
300.
So fuel setup, we're talking 2,200. This is already not.
Are you
looking
enjoying
good.
this?
No.
It's lots of fun on the other end of that pen, is it?
No, it's really not.
All the calculator.
So that gets your engine packaged together. Then you need an ECU. Now,
And yeah, you need the electronics for it, don't you?
and the electronics. Now, I'm not going to go into depth in ECUs. This can be a minefield. But if you've got an expensive engine, for God's sakes, don't put a NIS tune in it or nothing like that.
No, standalones are not expensive these days relative to what they used to be, and they are incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
We both have favoured Link ECU.
Yep.
Our tuner favours Link Jack.
Yep, Jack's.
So that's what we went with on
Yep.
this, and also what I had in the R32 as well.
So for like a wideband, a link, and all the associated sensors, we're talking two and a half?
I think you might be a bit out on that. These days, I think because this is on a plug-in ECU for the Neo.
Yes.
So I think a plug-in's about 1,200-1,300 quid. This car also runs Haltech CAN Lambda,
Yeah.
which is 300-400 quid.
Yeah.
You've got your coil setup on this, so this is on R8 coils.
It's on R8 core packs, strongly advise.
Yeah.
That isn't that expensive actually.
No, they're not too bad.
No.
They're probably 300 quid by the time you've got the loom to run them.
Yeah. I'd say a touch more than that. I'd say at least 400 to be fair.
Yeah. This car does also have, now this is, again, this is probably a personal preference thing. But if you've got the potential in the ECU, and on a car of this level, I don't understand why you wouldn't run a modern digital dash.
Yeah.
So this car has a Haltech IC7 in it.
Yeah.
That will show you anything that the ECU sees, rather than having bizarre gauges all over the dash. I had Deffies in the 32 for a while.
Yep.
I sold them and put a Haltech in my car, IC7 in my car as well.
Yeah. Although that is Deffies all over the dash is the Japanese way. of
It
doing
is sick, but it isn't very helpful when it just screams at you, whereas your Haltech will tell you what the problem is and why the ECU is already cut. So yeah, you've got a Haltech dash. They are about £1,000, I think, by the time they're in the car.
Yep. And you need something to mount it in.
You need something.
Jack made me a really nice 3D printed surround, but
I bought one from Australia, from
Yeah.
the 32. This has a... Who is it? It has a trigger kit in it.
yes,
It's
this is a
nice
Ross
one.
Performance
Ross
trigger kit.
Performance, that's it.
But I paid, to be fair, DY put that on for me.
Yeah.
And that was part of my engine build.
But if you're going to use a Link G4X or further on, you will need at least an upgraded trigger wheel. The standard Nissan trigger wheels are too small of a definition for the ECU to deal with. They're 360 minus 2, I think, reluctor wheel, which is too fine for the sensor to pick up accurately. So you at least either need to go to an AEM trigger wheel, which is about 80 quid, but the proper thing to do at this level is to put the car on a cam and crank trigger kit.
Which is what this car's on.
Which is what this car is on, yeah.
So the two reference each other, and then you know if you've got an issue.
Yeah, because also the standard Nissan setup only runs a single cam sensor. There is no crank trigger.
Yeah.
And at high RPM, the belt stretches, the crank starts to move out of time in relation to the cams, and so you have to be a bit tamer on your timing.
Yes.
If you run a trigger kit, the car will be a lot crisper.
Yeah, yeah, you can put a lot more timing into it because the timing isn't wavering.
You haven't got
much.
such a vagueness to it. It's a lot more accurate.
Yeah, exactly that. So back to the ECU. So we're talking 1,400 quid for an ECU, and then the associated sensors, another 1,000, everything else?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah,
probably. And that's without the dash.
Loom to run all that?
What loom is on this?
So Jack made me a loom out of 2 looms that I gave him, and then didn't really charge me much for it, to be honest with you.
No, that was a favourite.
Yeah.
I had a loom built by Jack. He also didn't charge me what he should have. So I would hazard a guess for someone to build you something worth talking about 1,200 quid to 2 grand, I would say, for just an engine harness. This is not a full car harness. No. Just the engine harness.
So we'll say in the middle, 1,600, something like that.
With everything already wired for the relative sensors that you're going to have on the car.
Working back, we'll just stay on the drive line. Clutch. So you're going to want to run a decent clutch. If you're running big power, you'll want to run a twin plate of some description. The most affordable, cheapest, easiest option is something like an Extreme.
An Extreme, yeah.
Yeah, which is what this car has.
They are tried and tested at this point. They're not the most expensive clutch in the world. No, they're not the cheapest, but they are reliable. If Dwayne McKeever can't break one, you can't.
No, that's very true. I think I didn't pay mega money for it, but I think it was like 1,200 quid retail.
1,200 quid.
Yeah.
I think there's something.
I've put 1,200. Gearbox. Now you can go various ways with this.
At this power level.
At this power level, we're talking about This is a mid-level car, 600-700 horsepower, something that you could do a competition in. You probably wouldn't be the top dog. No. You probably wouldn't be the bottom guy, but you're not going to be far off the bottom these days. I run an OS Geiken box, as previously stated, which is a RB25 gearbox, so it mates straight to the engine.
It's a standard casing, isn't it?
It's a standard casing, but it has upgraded gears, upgraded input shafts, lay shafts, and a billet centre plate. Now, there's a couple of options. You can either go for the fancy one that I've got, which is about 5 grand.
For the whole box.
For the whole box, built, done. Or you can buy the one without the billet centre plate and without, I think, 4th and 5th
I think
gear.
it's only 1st to 3rd.
1st to 3rd. Version. You still get 4th and 5th.
Yeah, but they're standard.
But they're standard. And I think they're about 3.2, 3.3, something like that.
Yeah.
So I'll put 5. We'll play it on the worst case scenario. Now, I did have a few issues with it. It does seem to work now, and it seems to be pretty stout. So fingers crossed, that's all okay.
May that continue.
If you go sequential, you're looking at 8 to 10 grand. If
we'll come to that.
If you go dog box, you're looking at 6 grand, something like that.
Yeah, 6, 7.
Diff, prop shaft. So again, you can go welded or 2-way. The way this car's set up, it only really works on a 2-way. Someone like Garage D will build you a second-hand 2-way, a good second-hand 2-way for about...
not knackered, a good one.
Not like it's going to last a minute. In the UK, Garage D have, over the years, compiled every single Japanese car part known to man.
Yeah, if they don't have it, you don't need it.
Yeah, so but you are also kind of then... you don't have to go to them. There are other good companies. Get Dave at Garage 21. Amazing bloke. But for parts and availability, Garage D do seem to have the most.
Their famous quote is in stock.
Yeah. So. You'll be anywhere around £1,000 for a 2-way. So a second-hand one. Yeah. For a new one, you'll be looking at probably 1,400, something like that, 1,500.
Built in a casing, ready to bolt in the car.
Yeah, literally to your specs. You tell them, I want this, I use this drive shaft, this prop shaft, blah, 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 for this car, I want this ratio, and that's what you'll pay. Yeah. If they've got one on the shelf that will do, you might get it for a little bit less.
Maybe, possibly.
I'm going to go in the middle. We'll say 1,200 for the diff.
Yeah.
Internally speaking, in the car, my car is very basic. However, the biggest cost you're going to have is roll cage.
Yeah.
Now, back in the day, I didn't pay much at all for my roll cage. Right. Unfortunately, materials
are not cheap. I've built a fair few cages with a good friend of ours, Ed.
Yep.
I would say this car has a fairly basic 6-point cage in it with NASCAR style door bars and a rear cross brace.
Yep.
You're probably not going to get a lot of change for 2 grand if you have a friend.
Yeah.
that can do it for you, who's good.
Yeah.
$2,000 to infinity. You can spend as much as you want on a cage.
You can spend a lot
Depends
of money
how
on a cage.
serious you want to get with things.
Yeah.
And it's worth noting, actually, referencing back to my build, that a lot of tracks in this country now are stipulating roll cages. So
that's something
it's not going to be long till you probably have to focus that in, budget that into a more basic car build as well.
Yeah, most tracks are gonna require roll cages in the future.
Yeah.
So
there are companies. There's a company in Ireland that will sell you a pre-bent, pre-notched cage.
Yep.
I actually was looking at one for my 350, despite the fact I can build cages. I'm lazy, so if
laziest
someone can
fabricator.
post me one and I just have to glue it in, then maybe that'll do. They're about 850, 900 quid, but you are basically paying for materials and paying for it to be bent to a jig.
Yeah.
Obviously, that jig needs to fit all the variants of that car.
Yeah.
So it won't be the tightest fitting cage in the world. If you need the main hoop further back, or you need to accommodate a bigger seat, a bigger person, a taller person, then you are going to have to go down the custom route, and that really, I'd say, if you're lucky, 1,500 quid onwards, but I'd say more like $2,000 will get you a good quality safe cage in this country.
Yep, would have thought so. So I'll go inside the car now. So my car is very simple. It has 2 seats. They're Sparco Evo seats, and 2 harnesses. This is my preference of seat. I've sat in quite a few, and they're my favourite.
What I would say is that is something you do probably want to get right.
Yeah.
You want to go and sit in as many seats as you can and find something that fits you.
Yeah. So funny story. Just a quick one. When the car came from Japan, it had a Zeta, the original Bride Zeta 1, which is an old seat.
And it looked old.
I ran that seat until 2 years ago. So I ran that seat for like 6 and a bit years. I never fitted it.
And I really never fitted it.
And Callum really never fitted it. It was too close and too small. And I never realised how bad it was, but I was too tight to change it until I went and tried a load of seats in Nottingham. There's like a sports seats.
Motorsport company.
Sports seats place. I sat in all of the brands. And the best one for me, and it is a preference thing, was a Sparco Evo. So that's what I bought 2 of. I bought the slightly larger size because I'm getting slightly larger.
Middle-aged spread, it's fine. Trust me, I'm an expert.
And that's what I run. I think I bought the ones that were slightly out of FIA date because they're cheaper, because I'm tight. But for a brand new Sparco Evo L, you're talking 450 quid with an FIA sticker. If you're not bothered by the FIA sticker, you can get them a bit cheaper, or you can buy second hand. But we'll go with the 450 quid times 2. Then I've got 2 harnesses with those as well. So the harnesses I think were about 150 quid each. So that's another 300. So we're talking 1,200 quid for seats and harnesses.
Your number's going to be really big.
It's getting spicy, Callum.
It's going to make me feel way better.
I've put safety, lol. Safety, joking aside, we had this conversation the other day.
Yeah.
We're getting older and we're getting a bit wiser, not a lot wiser.
Not a lot. I spent £60 on a sun plug.
65?
Oh, 65, yeah. We're not that much wiser.
No. So this car is about to get a fire suppression system. They're about 450 quid. But obviously if your car goes up, it's well worth...
450 quid well spent.
Well worth doing. On top of that, if you want to compete in the UK and if you want to do most big tracks, they'll ask for a battery cut-off, which...
Again.
Worth doing.
Should really be in the car already.
Probably 150 quid would do you right on that. If you fit it yourself, if you pay someone else, it would be more. So you're looking at another 600 quid for all that. My car is very basic, as previously stated. It's still on the original bushes from Nissan. They're hanging on for dear life now. But it's on stock lower control arms, stock rear arms. The only thing that's on this car is the upper control arms, 2 of in the rear, 3 of in the rear.
Camber toe traction.
Which we're going to say, 500 quid, 600 quid for them?
Yeah, probably for the setup.
They did come on the car. No, they didn't come on the car. I bought Driftworks ones. And then in the front, I've got stock low control arms, stock tie rods, stock tie rod ends. But I do run
all stock. I did not realise that all that
all stock rack position. It's all stock. But I do run the B knuckle. I don't know exactly how much they are, but I think they're about 550, 600 quid.
Yeah, I would
shipped.
say, because not everyone is going to want to run B-knuckle.
No.
So you probably factor in 5, because they're as a knuckle, they're a little bit more expensive than the average cut knuckle or modified knuckle, unless you're going to start going to aftermarket setups.
Yep.
I'd say 500 quid on a lock kit gets you going, doesn't it?
Yep. And then final things is stuff like, this is mechanically speaking, plumbing. So things like intercooler pipes, intercoolers themselves, radiators, radiator hoses, all that sort of stuff. Oil coolers, which this car has one oil cooler. Yeah. All that stuff is probably going to set you back best part of £1,000 realistically.
Yeah, by the time probably.
Yeah. So that's the car and most of the drivetrain done. I know there'll be bits missing there.
Yeah. This is, like I say,
it's as close as we can.
We'd be here all week if we did every minutiae.
Cosmetically, I've run the same kit for a long time. We bought this D-Max kit about 6-7 years ago.
Back in the Stancy days.
Back in the Stancy days.
Genuine D-Max kit as well.
It is a genuine kit. It's been patched up several times. I think that was about 600 quid. But most kits,
I think that's
most kits are between 500 and 800 quid.
Yeah, I'd say so for bumper, skirts, and a rear bumper.
Yep.
Oh, front and rear bumper and skirts.
Yep. They're the original lights. Bonnet was about 450.
I don't know. I
think they're about 450.
Yeah. 500 quid is roughly what an aftermarket bonnet costs.
Yeah. And then
over fenders
and
wings.
Origin Labo, they kind of fit.
They fit well enough for what this is doing.
Yeah. I think they're like 160, 170 for the rear and the same again for the front.
Yeah, we'll call it 400 quid, 450 quid. 400
for overs. I've got a Voltec style wing. I think that was like 500 quid, I think.
Yeah.
500 for the wing. And then livery, paint, etc., etc. I don't run any fancy mirrors, they're stock mirrors. Yeah. I think the paint, we did the same thing as we did with Callum.
So we'll call it 600 quid for that.
So it was about 600 quid for the paint.
But now for mine.
And then the livery. So the livery, you can go as mad as you want. For a livery like this, depends on who designs it. I used ASR. Adam he is
the man in this country for this style.
Yeah, if
the
you like
Japanese style.
Yeah, if you like the Larry style, he's your guy. He'll charge you. I don't want to speak for him, but
he'll charge you an amount of money. We won't go putting people's fees out there.
He didn't charge me a great deal, to be honest with you. I would say you'd have to speak to him.
But if you factor it in with also then having the livery print, and then we won't offend anyone.
So again, depends on what material we want to go for, but a livery print fitted done, you're looking at 12 to 1500 quid, I would say. Somewhere in that.
For something worth having.
Yes.
This is a whole subject in itself.
Yeah, we're not going to go into.
We're not going to go into. But please don't put 3 stickers on your Fiesta and call it a livery.
That's not.
I really will be offended.
Exhaust we made in house. Just thought about that, which was like
another probably 500 quid by the time it's all said and done.
Yeah, and then wheels. Again, preference thing. This car I've got works on the front, 17x9, works on the rear, 18 by 9.5. So I think they're about £1,000, 1,200 quid.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
like
we'll say 1,200. Yeah. This is not including tyres.
Also, we didn't mention on mine, and something that you do need to mention on this. You do need more than one set of wheels.
Yeah, we'll come into the costs of running the car in just a second.
Oh, would you not factor that in as part of the car?
Well, it is part of the car, but we're just talking about the car in its bare bones. Okay. So that is very rough. There's probably a couple of grand's worth of stuff that we've forgotten.
Yeah,
because
we won't put that on there because Adam will be sick.
There's so much. Now, the next thing we need to go into as well, whilst I add this up and have a little cry, is so you've got your drift car.
Yeah.
But something like this, you're not using it on the road. So you need to get it to wherever you're getting it to. Now, if you've got a mate that can take it on a trailer and he charges you nothing, great. However, unfortunately,
not all of us have access to that.
No. So you're going to need a tow vehicle.
Yeah. So whilst Adam adds that up, I'll have a stab at that.
This is getting fucking scary.
Yeah, I bet it is. Yeah, you've gone all quiet, Adam, and all red in the face.
I thought I was doing well to talk and add this up, but it's just getting a bit spenny.
Your breaths are getting like mine. They're getting all deep and grumbly. A drift car, really, in this country, a tow car, probably in this country, you could spend 1,500 quid and tow it behind a 330D if you're a psychopath. You will have to have a conversation with Vosa about why that's not a good idea. In this country, to buy something to tow with, your cheapest option is probably like an old X5.
Yep.
That's probably $3,000.
The only problem is
$4,000.
you've got to be really careful because some of those don't actually tow that much.
No, but you do have to pay attention to tow weights. We are advocates for actually towing things properly. Please don't strap it behind something far too small, because it's not you that you're risking, it's everyone else. But for something sensible in this country, you can spend $3,000, you can spend $300,000 if you want to tow it with a Cullinan. Everyone will call you a knob because they're disgusting. But you could, in this country, you're probably going to spend $6,000 to $10,000 for a sensible, reliable tow vehicle.
Yeah, I use a Touareg, whatever you want to call it. And you'll pick up a Touareg with like less than 100,000 miles for $10,000, and they tow 3.5 tons. They'll do 30 to the gallon, and they actually
can move their own weight, even with a trailer on.
Yeah.
A trailer in this country, if you want a big enclosed race trailer, you're going to spend $25,000. If you want a not cheap, but a decent open trailer, $3,000 to $5,000 if you're going to buy it brand new, I would say.
We'll split the difference. We'll say, what, 3.5, 4?
Yeah, 3.5 will buy you a nice trailer.
Because you're going to want a tyre rack as well, because you've got to take all your tyres.
Yeah.
That's going to be 500 quid.
So you're going to be $15,000, 12 to $15,000 into a reliable, safe tow setup.
I've put 14. 14 would see you right.
Yeah.
With a decent tow setup.
So perhaps you can offset that and say that my wife really wants a Touareg as a daily driver. And
that's a common one.
That's what I'm trying to do at the minute.
Yeah.
So you don't necessarily have to focus that in as a total cost, but it's something that you do have to be aware of in this country. What was your maths on your cheap $5,500 car that you bought, Adam?
Lucy, turn this off right now. Now, before I say this number, bear in mind this is a grassroots car. Yeah. Grassroots. It is a powerful car, and it is the upper end of grassroots.
But also, I would say before you say this number, this is basically all been built by us.
Yes.
This is not labour.
Yeah. So
this is no labour cost.
Some of those bits will include labour, like we didn't think about mapping. Yeah, mapping. I mean, like Jack. To be fair, Jack sponsors me. He's a good lad.
600 quid.
Yeah.
Ish. Say as long as it genuinely is ready to tune. Don't drop cars off the tuners that aren't actually ready to go on the dyno. But that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah, we won't. That's another podcast. So the number is scary. I'm going to add to the number £2,000 because
you're sure you've forgotten something.
There will be something that we've forgotten. Someone on the podcast, rear lights, Someone is screaming right now and saying, "You forgot this."
Not as much as you're going to be screaming when you say the big number.
It's $45,000, Callum.
Yeah.
It's just shy of $45,000.
It's harrowing, isn't it? This is exactly where I ended up with the 32. I did do it twice.
To be fair, I didn't pay a 330D gearbox for my car.
No, you paid actual money for your car.
Yeah, and I didn't.
And that is us factoring in probably current market value for the shell.
What's the car worth? 30, 35 maybe?
In this current market, probably about 25.
Really?
Yeah, the market's really tanked lately.
Good. Good. So if anyone in America wants an F15
in this country,
it's nearly 25 years old, and it will be £55,000.
Yeah. So that is a big number, but it is a lot of car.
Yeah, I mean that is a 700
horsepower. It's a basic car, but it's a lot of car.
Yeah, it's a bit leery. Now, if you put an SR in it or a more basic engine package, you'd probably be looking at 35.
Yeah, maybe. To build a reliable £400,
yeah,
300 or 400 horsepower version of this with perhaps the engine it came in, like an SR or a more basic RB, probably knock 10 off it. Yeah. So you're then looking at 35 grand. Yeah. Which is not cheap. I mean, that's like you can go out and buy a really nice BMW M2 or an M4 or something like that. Or put a deposit on a house. Or it is a house deposit. It's a significant house deposit. Yeah. So you really want to hope Lucy doesn't watch this. Yeah, I really hope Lucy doesn't watch this. Now, Lucy, if you are watching this, I didn't pay that money for the engine or car. No. But that's why I said at the very start, in current climate, I could not afford to build this car. No, absolutely not. That is the real cost. We said at the start, that is the real cost of building a car like this now. So for an entry 350, you're looking at 14 grand. If you want if you want it nice, you want it stylish. If you want to, so you can be on track for 6 to 8. Yep. In a presentable 350Z, because that's our frame of reference. Yep. You can be on track in a 300 or 400 horsepower hero car, if you
Yep.
will, the JDM hero car. So this sort of applies to S13, 14, PS,
Yep.
Skylines. They're all similar kind of money, S15s.
They are.
You are going to be 30 plus.
Yeah.
If you want to make big boy horsepower reliably and safely as
And not a
motorsport will
obliterated
allow,
diff all the time, or
it's going to be sort of 40 to 50.
yeah.
But this is small fish compared to the world of pro competition.
Yeah. Now, I'm not going to break down the cost of competition cars because this is going to be a really long episode.
But we can probably add, if we were to turn this car into a pro competition car,
You could double it.
you could double it easily.
Yeah.
And
So to have a competition spec car now, you'll be talking 25 grand for an engine setup, at
Yep.
least 10,000 pounds in gearbox. That's 35.
Yeah.
In Wisefab, so Wisefab is the go-to for suspension
Yeah.
setup, stuff like that. You're going to be another 10,000 pounds. Coilovers, setup.
By the
you're
time
gonna
you've
want-
done proper setup,
So you're at 45. Fabrication is going to be another 5,000 pounds.
minimum, you're
gonna
probably
need-
going to spend that on a cage.
Yeah, so then you're at 50. Then you've got your fuel setup. That's going to be another 3,000 pounds.
Yeah.
Then
Your body panels, because everything needs to be Kevlar or something. Doesn't need to be, but if you're going to use the
Realistically.
car and compete well at a
Yeah.
high level,
So we're getting up towards 65. You're then going to need obviously all your wiring and stuff like that, and plumbing. That's going to be at least, you're going to want to put it on a really good ECU. So you're going to be spending 3 grand on an ECU. You're going to be spending 3 grand on a loom easy.
yeah,
So that's another 6.
you're not getting change from 100 grand to build a good
To build a full competition spec car, you're 100 grand. And I do know, I'm not going to name names, but I do know of 2 people that compete in Drift Masters, and both of their cars are in excess of 200,000 pounds.
Yeah. That's without that and
Without spares.
without the tow
Yeah.
rig, which is now a lorry.
Yeah, and then that's one thing we mentioned the trailer in the car, but when you go to an event, as you said earlier, you don't go with a pair of wheels.
No.
You go with 3 pairs of wheels.
Adam
So-
does. I go with one other pair of wheels because they're splits and they're £1,000.
And the time man.
And the
hates
tire man
you.
doesn't like me. Yeah.
Next thing we need to think about is your consumables.
Yeah, what it actually costs to use these cars.
Yeah,
So for
this is the final thing, I think.
yeah, this really is this
Yeah.
is what it truly costs. You've got your £14,000 budget car, or your £45,000 mid-level car,
Or your £100,000.
£100,000 minimum pro car.
Yeah.
You now need to go and use it. And really, in this country, to do an event worth talking about, Dory Fest,
Yeah.
Drift Matsuri,
Yeah.
anything along those lines.
Any of the competition events such
Yeah,
as
any of
Drift
the-
League, British Drift Champion. Oh no.
Yeah, we'll go for
Yeah.
a practice day.
Yeah.
But if you're going to do Dory Fest, you're going to do Drift Matsuri, you're probably spending 250 quid, 300 quid on a ticket for the weekend.
Yep.
So let's get this written down because this will be a disgusting number as well.
I don't want to do this game anymore. I don't like this game anymore.
No, this hurts both of us though. So yeah, you're going to be 200 to 300 quid on an entry.
Let's say 300 because
Say
realistically
300,
it's
'cause really
150
that
quid a
is more
day.
what it's like
It's
now.
150 a day.
Yeah. So that gets you a ticket to an event. Now, in this country, we are very shy of tracks that we can drive at. There isn't a great deal.
Yeah.
There's a few little entry-level tracks. We're very lucky that one of them is 5 minutes up the road from us.
Yeah. Although
But you wouldn't take a car like this to it
no.
because it's too small.
Yeah.
So in this country, for us, our closest fast track where you can stretch this car's legs is
Silverstone. So
which is
Silverstone is a demo event. We've mentioned it a few
invite
times.
only.
Invite only. You cannot go and
Book a
attend.
drift day there.
We are putting on a demonstration for the Jap Fest spectators
different
and
big car
people
shows that they have on there.
So I'm going to be honest with you, we don't really pay to enter, but it still doesn't mean that it's free
not a
to
free
go.
day out, no.
Because you've still got your tyres, you've still got your fuel, you've still got everything else. So just bear that in mind. Depending on the event, will depend on the cost.
But that's our nearest track, and that's 2.5 hours away.
It's 2.5 hours away. Yeah.
To go to any tracks that you would go as a practice day, Scotland, Dory Fest, that is, I think, about 10 to 12
Well,
for
from
us.
us. Yeah, from
For
us.
us.
So we're in North Norfolk, but it depends on where you
Depends
are.
obviously where you are in the country,
Yeah.
but for us, that's that. Anglesey, which is North
7
Wales, that's sort of 6 hours really by the time you're towing or driving your drift car there. You're not doing 90 the whole
So
way.
what we're saying is you're going to spend money to get there.
Yeah, you're going to spend money. So you need to factor in your diesel for your tow vehicle. You've just done Matsuri.
I did just do Matsuri, and I
Roughly.
used 3/4 tank of diesel there and 3/4 tank of diesel back.
Yeah.
So you're talking 70 quid each way, minimum, 140, 150 quid.
For us, you need somewhere to sleep when you're there. Now, I've done this before. You can sleep in your tow rig, or you can sleep in whatever car you've driven there. It's awful. It ruins your weekend. It's a terrible idea. I don't know why anyone does it.
Yeah, the thing you've got to bear in mind as well is, like, if you're going and you spend all that money on an event and you feel like death, like, why? You might as well spend...
you've sort of ruined it a little bit for yourself.
And it sounds stupid, but it is a lot of work. Like, it does knack you out. Drifting, all the prep beforehand, organising everything. By the time you actually get there, you've probably done a few late nights because you've gone, oh crap, I got an oil leak, and you're probably knackered already. So I'm not saying you want to stay in a 5-star hotel.
Premier Inn is fine.
But you don't want to...
in this country.
Yeah, you don't want to be...
And you're going to spend, in this country, 90 to 150 quid a night, depending on where you are. On a Premier Inn.
If you share, obviously we tend to share, because we like playing with each other. It's a bit cheaper, but
So if you can split the cost with some of the guys you're with, or if you've got someone coming with you, then that obviously helps. But
2-day event, you're going to want a minimum.
2 nights, 3 nights. 2 nights minimum. You're probably going to want 3 nights, really. What did we do in Scotland? We did 3 nights.
We did 3 nights in Scotland,
because
and
it's
I think
so much
it was
further.
about 320 quid split between 2 of us.
Yeah. And also, you need to factor in food and drink. You need to eat and drink. Adam's food bill will be smaller than mine, but it's still sizable.
Only minimally. not as small as you think.
It's life on the road, so it's service stations. It's fast food. We tend to try and go for at least one decent meal at a weekend, don't we? If we're away.
You once said at this point it's like throwing a teacup of water on a bonfire because you've spent so much money.
You spend so much money anyway, you might as well go and have a proper dinner to round it off. And that tends to be what we do, doesn't it? At the end of an event, we'll go and have a decent meal at the end of an event.
I'll have at least 6 monsters on the way there to keep myself awake. So you've got to factor all that in. I would say you'll easily spend in a weekend 200 quid.
Yeah, you probably spend a couple hundred quid on food and drink.
Yeah, easy.
And existing in general.
Yeah.
Tyres.
Oh.
And this is another thing where you could spend as little or as lot as you want.
I don't know how long this podcast is, but we haven't got time to go through all the difference of tyres.
No.
Now, if you're running a big power car, you're going to have to run a good tyre. There's no point.
Yeah, it doesn't work otherwise.
No. If you're running a cheap car, i.e. Maybe a 350 or a budget E36 or something like that, then you might get away with a budget tyre. I wouldn't suggest using part ones because you end up spending so much money changing tyres. And time.
You waste so much time. You've got to remember you've paid for X amount of open track time in your track day. You might have 4 hours of track time, you might have 6, but there might be 90 cars there. So if you're in the pits every 5 minutes, having done 2 laps, changing tyres, although you've saved money in tyres, you've lost money in track time. So I wouldn't do anything now without brand new tyres.
No.
I've done it on budgets. The last few events, I think I spent about 600 to 700 quid for about 14 to 16 budget tyres. I think the Racing Pros I used like this year,
Racing Pros,
eBay's cheapest, were 120 quid a pair.
Yeah.
And I did 14 tyres. So
7 pairs, so 120 times 7 is 840. You were slightly off.
Yeah, there you go. And in 2 days, I did all of them. I used them all, but the last pair were to drive home on. So
don't forget, you've got fitting on that too.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. You also have to pay, I think, about 15 quid a pair. 15 to 20 quid a pair.
Depends where it is.
To have them changed.
Yeah, it depends where it is.
In that case, I've done 6 pairs of tyres being changed.
We'll say 6 times 15, 90. So you're looking at,
you're at
round it up, 950.
Yeah, 950 in tyres and tyre changing.
Yeah. Fuel
in the drift car.
Tyres again.
Of course. Sorry.
If you're looking
tyres
at
for you,
for me, I'll be honest with you. If I'm going to a weekend event, I cannot afford to drive constantly. No. I don't have the budget, and one, it will knacker me out because this car is a handful to drive. And two, I cannot afford to do 20 tyres in a weekend. I just can't.
No.
Like some of the boys at Matsuri, I think one guy did 30 tyres in the weekend.
36 Arik took.
Arik,
he did all of them.
Some of those are budgets.
They were budgets, but he did 36 tyres in a 600 horsepower car.
Yeah.
In a weekend.
So it can get real leery. How much does a decent pair of tyres cost? So something like this, which is a Zestino hard, which is a really good tyre, good for a car of 350 to 650, 700 horsepower, is about, I think retail, they're about 110, 115 quid a tyre for a 265, 3518. Obviously, if you run a small tyre, it will be slightly cheaper.
You might get a deal, say 80 quid if you
so
know a guy.
we
90
just
quid.
Speak to Axel. Axel actually messaged me on the last podcast. Axel is in charge of Zestino Tyres UK. I think it's his company. I'm pretty sure it is.
I think it is, yeah.
And if you order a pallet, so if you club in with your mates or if you get brave and order a pallet, they will be cheaper than that, considerably, I would say. You'd have to speak to him as to how much you'd get them for. But let's say
100 quid a tyre.
Let's say 100 quid a tyre. And I would do...
Well, at Santa Pod, this did 2 laps to a pair of tyres.
Yes,
so...
But
you're talking £100.
This car doesn't like hot lapping.
No.
And at Matsuri, I was getting about 5-6 runs.
Yeah.
On a pair.
So if you're on a smaller circuit where you're at high big pulls for a long time, this car did £100 a lap in tyres.
And that's a wrap.
Matsuri, yeah, you sort of. How many tyres did you take to Matsuri?
I took 16, and I used all of them over the weekend.
And you could have driven more.
Oh, I could have driven way more.
Way more.
But that's how many I could get on the trailer, and that's how many my pocket would allow me to spend. So 16 at 100 quid is 1,600 quid.
Yeah. And that is not driving as much as you could have by quite a considerable amount.
No, I was with Jake from the internet, as we all know. And Jake from the internet did, I think, 24 tyres.
I think.
And then he runs the Accelera 651s, which I think are a similar price.
I think they're a very similar price, yeah. Maybe a little bit cheaper, but not a lot.
Tyres is a very difficult subject to answer. I've got a price variance here from me and Callum of between 950 and £1,600 for a weekend. However, it could go much higher than that.
Yeah.
It could be less than that. It depends on...
And as we were saying about the pro level cars, they run a tyre called a Velino or Extremes. They are €330 a pair. So 165 euros a tyre. So what, 140 quid a tyre. They get 2 laps. No ifs, buts or maybes.
Yeah. €330 is like a good price too.
I'm sure they get sponsorship and they maybe get better prices in bulk as they'll do. And I doubt they come home without using 20 tyres minimum.
No,
I would
definitely.
say. So it's a sport where you can spend as much as you want to spend. Scope creep yet again creeps in. So
yeah, that's a running theme. That
it is. Fuel in the drift car. So that's the next thing.
So I run a methanol mix, 35% methanol mix. So you have to buy the methanol and the petrol. To be fair, the methanol is about the same price as V-Power per litre. So it's £1.50 a litre.
50-ish, I think it is in this country at the minute.
And I will do 2 tanks in a weekend comfortably, maybe a touch more.
Yeah.
So a tank is about 75 quid.
Yeah.
So you're looking at 140 quid. £140 minimum in fuel, but I'd never let it run empty, so I'd probably put a bit more than that in it. So you'd be looking at 180 quid.
Yeah, which is about, actually, this will make you feel better, that's about what I did in the 350 as well. It's about a tank a day in a 2-day event. So 160, 170 quid for me as well. Yeah. So if you're doing a 2-day event, you're gonna spend a couple hundred quid on fuel, basically. Thereabouts.
I would say so. And then you've got to take all your spare parts and everything else, but we won't go into that. Yeah. But say you break something, you probably will over a 2-day event.
If not, you'll wear something out.
Yeah, so you're going to have to budget 250 quid. I would have thought 250 quid for something that you break, something that needs replacing when you get back. So we'll put in 250 quid.
Or at least an oil change, because if you're not oil changing your car after each event, then good luck.
Yeah, literally.
Especially at this level.
So we've got tickets, diesel, hotel, food, tyres, fuel, and just miscellaneous bits, 250 quid.
Yeah.
I think that's the
That's the core of a drift day.
this is for a 2-day event.
Yeah, this is a weekend. This is a weekend away using your 14 to 50,000 pound asset that you've built yourself as a hobby.
So the car that you can't really afford to build, but you've built it, but then you
You've
can't
built it
really
anyway.
afford to use it. Well, we're about to tell you how much it's going to cost you
Just
to
to
use it.
actually use it.
So this is going to be on the lowest side. So on the lowest side for a weekend, would you like to guess?
No, I don't want this number either. 1,500 quid?
Oh, you're miles off.
Oh, really? Good. Brilliant.
So on the cheaper side, you're looking at £2,330, which is more than I thought it was going to
Yeah,
be.
that's more than I thought it was going to be as well. To infinity, really. You don't need to
infinity.
add that one up because it's as much as you want to spend.
Yeah, it's
Now, I would argue that you probably could do that cheaper if you're willing to sleep in your car, if you're willing to take a picnic with you every day and eat meal deals.
If you
and
bulk buy tyres,
tyres. So
if you can find a friend to get the VAT off the tyres, that's always a good one.
I think we clubbed in a bit on Dory Fest last year.
Yeah.
And I think it cost me about 1,500 quid.
I would say 1,500 quid to £2,000 for a weekend should see you right.
Yeah.
If you're a little bit careful.
If you're doing a good event at a good track, and we obviously have to factor in travelling for us because it's a long way from us.
Yeah, because we live in Narnia.
Yeah, we do relative to Driftland. So that really is a focus on, well, that is a basic breakdown on what it truly costs us to drift.
Yeah, the true cost of drifting is a lot.
It's eye-watering.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can do it cheaper. You can do it way, way cheaper if you want to drive a very, very basic entry car, like a banger level car.
Yeah.
It's not going to be pretty,
No.
but you are, I suppose, drifting.
On the flip side, if you go to Norfolk Arena, you can buy an E36 for a couple of grand. You can buy part-worn tyres
use
or
part-worn tyres.
acquire them, have them fitted. And I would imagine at Norfolk Arena, you could do a day for less than £400-500.
Oh, easy. I would
Easy.
say, I think the entry is about 80 quid.
Yeah.
You're going to do a tank of fuel.
Yeah.
You're going to do some tyres. So
But you'll do food.
You probably do 200 quid. You could probably do it for 200 quid, I bet.
Do you reckon?
On an entry on a very basic E36.
With no hotel, no...
Yeah, if you live local.
Plus 100 quid for food and travel.
Yeah.
300 quid. I would say that sounds...
Yeah, that seems fair.
That seems fair. So...
But if you want to go and do a bigger track in this country,
Yeah.
it goes up and up and up from there, really.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, if you go and look at other sports, motorsport is
not cheap.
Not cheap. You go and do. I've done some track days, and you go and do a track day, and you can easily blow 500 quid on a few some brake pads and the entry and some lunch, and you're 500 quid in. It is scary how quickly it adds up. But to summarise, my least favourite podcast of the two we've done.
Yeah, we're on two, but this one was the painful one. So we ripped the band-aid off early and get this over with.
Callum's 15 grand into his cheap car.
Yeah.
Which costs him a minimum of 1,500 quid to 2 grand to use for a weekend.
Yeah.
I am, if I were to build it now, £45,000 into my car.
That costs
which
you
is going to cost me
£2,500 to
minimum
use.
2.5 grand to use for a weekend.
And we're not really sure why we like drifting. That's the heart of the matter. And also, one thing I would say is that doesn't factor in the time. And this sport is so time consuming.
That's a very, very, very good
So
point.
these cars are not like your average daily. You can't just turnkey, jump in and go and drive them to work every day, or to the track, if you will. They take a lot of fettling, maintenance in, checking everything's still tight, checking everything's right fluid-wise, alignments, prepping tyres, changing tyres on wheels before you go to events, ordering your tyres before, making sure they're here on time. All the other things that you forgot that you broke last time and didn't fix, and then you've remembered that you've got an event that you've got to load up for in 2 days and you haven't bought the parts
You're
for.
racing to somewhere to go and pick up a part that you forgot to buy, and it's in Narnia. So then you've got to go all the way there, and then you've lost half a day. So you've got up at 3 a.m. to go to Oxford to pick up a Lambda sensor, to come back to fit the Lambda sensor. It is scary, and it's
a commitment, and it's very cliche, very cringe, but it really is a lifestyle. You have to live it. It's not just something you can dabble with, because it is time consuming, money consuming. It's so heavy on outgoings for the few hours of track day you have each time you take the car out, if the car doesn't break.
Yeah, it's mental.
And it might unload off the trailer and break on the first lap.
Oh, I've seen that.
Break your heart on the first lap.
Yeah, I saw. So at Silverstone, the last Silverstone event I did, we were going around to the start line, and one chap who has a massively spec'd 1,000 horsepower V8 S15. Went to warm his tyres up, and the prop shaft exploded at the bottom of his car. So he didn't even get to the start line, and he'd got a big bill and no fun. So it can happen, and it has happened. It's happened to me only once, I think, or twice, but it can happen. But Callum's right. There is a psychological aspect, an emotional aspect, and a massive time aspect.
Yeah.
After every time I take this car out, it's bolt check, alignment, potentially a service, potentially a bush or something. As a minimum, it's cleaning the car, unloading the car, loading the car, checking spare parts. There is, I would say, probably, if you do it properly, a minimum of 2 days work to turn the car around for the next event, which if you work for yourself, that's 2 days money you're not getting.
And if you work for someone else, it's 2 days of time you've got to fit in around also having a full-time job, family, relationship, children, whatever else you have going on in your life.
That's a key bit. You need to have an incredibly understanding family.
You do have an incredibly understanding partner as well.
Yeah.
And she also needs to hear some white lies when parts start turning up. Well, it was only £30, that unplug, not 65.
Yeah.
You have to have someone that is tolerant, because it's not just the money, it is the time, it's the time away from home. And like we said, I think really, like you said, it's a 2 day turnaround. And so for us to do Scotland for Dory Fest, it's a day each side of the event travelling, 2 days at the event.
4 days total.
So that's 4 days. You've got probably the day you get back unloading and putting everything away and sorting the car out.
5.
You've got 2 to 3 days of prep by the time you've gone, or evenings of prep.
6, 7.
Yeah, it's probably a week to do a 2 day event by the time you've travelled, prepped the car, loaded and unloaded.
And don't forget, this is for a
hobby.
Grassroots hobby.
This is fun, apparently.
Yeah.
This felt more like a counselling session than a or like Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm Callum and I have an issue.
Yeah.
I have many, but
I might be homeless after this. We'll find out. But it's a hell of a lot.
Yeah, it's a huge
It's
commitment.
a hell of a lot. You have to be 100% dedicated. And like I said, we're only like grassroots, if that. And some of these guys who are running these,
I mean, Jake is a great example of this. He did something like 35 events last year.
Yep.
So,
which is why we didn't see him.
Which is why I didn't
other
see
than
him.
at the events.
Why he looked very tired when we did.
Yeah.
Because he's, having to turn his car over basically every other weekend. And in the height of summer, he was doing weekends back to back to back to back.
Yeah, and his car is very, very, very similar spec to this. It's a bit more fancy.
Yeah.
A little bit less powerful, but it's a very, very similar spec to this.
Yeah.
So it requires the same, if not more, maintenance.
Huge dedication and commitment to run a car like that.
Yeah.
Or to run any car, but to run a car that regularly as well.
And the one thing we did forget as well is if you're doing a competition, you need an Ed.
Yeah, you need a guy. You need a friend who is down to party.
We have an Ed.
We have a guy called Ed, who's a great personal friend of ours.
Yeah.
Was the best man at my wedding. He is a guy who will come with you to an event. He will do, if you say that diff's falling out of the car, he'll have his overalls on and have the diff back in whatever method it needs in the next 10 to 15 minutes.
Prime example, Jake blew his gearbox at Dory Fest, not last year, year before.
Yeah.
We all chipped in within an hour, he had a new gearbox in his car.
From it rolling on the trailer, which we used as a ramp, to backing back off the trailer was an hour and 2 minutes to do a full gearbox change on a red hot car.
Yeah, but if you're in a competition, you need to think about that. Or if you're even if you're going for a weekend away, you need to think.
The car needs to be easy to work on. You need to make it easy to work on. And you also need people to come and help you.
That's it.
You are not running cars like this on your own.
No.
Not easily.
That's something you need to figure out. And if you're doing a competition, of course, and you've got a 5-minute rule, or
you need multiple guys.
Which is a cost, because you can't expect them to do it for nothing.
No.
So
we're lucky. Ed's a good friend of ours, and he wants to come anyway. So, and weirdly, that's his idea of fun. So,
Ed's up for the crack. As it were.
Yeah. You need a few solid mates as well.
Really good mates that are willing to lay in a dusty, crappy car park and rebuild the bottom of your car for you, so you can go have a good time.
When bits fall off, and they do quite a lot.
But no, Ed's a good dude, and we should have probably mentioned that Ed.
We should have mentioned Ed sooner. We should have mentioned Ed in my origin story. But in my 32 would have been in the scrapyard years before because I'd have given up on it. So
pretty
you
much.
do need some solid friends in this sport as well, and you make them, but it's a huge part of it.
I think because you have to be a bit obsessed and nuts to do it, you mix with the same sort of people, and you click with.
We're all suffering together.
Yeah, like Alcoholics Anonymous.
We've all done this maths. We all thought it was a good idea, and we're all here suffering, going, "Why are we doing this?"
Yeah.
Because also the outlay for the reward is vastly different.
I mean, I've won Jap Fest, and I came second at Jap Fest this year, and I got nothing.
Yeah, there is no money in this.
There's no money. No, some people
even at pro level, they win a bit. They might win. I think the most I've seen is 10 grand get won at a European event.
Yeah, for your £200,000.
But I bet he spent more than that weekend.
Oh God, yeah.
So, but for us as well, time-wise, money-wise, you lay a huge amount out. You might get a total at a weekend of 2.5 hours on track. If you have maybe 3, by the time you've queued up, changed tyres, actual runs.
Let's stop doing this because I'm getting really sad.
You're not getting a great deal back, but it is so worth it.
This is the thing. So I said earlier, I've done a bit of track stuff. I have, and halfway through a track day, unless I'm in something really rowdy, which is then going to cost you crazy money, you're like, it gets boring. Yeah. Whereas I've never ever been on a drift day and been bored.
No.
Never ever. And I've always had a great time, no matter whether it's a small track or big track. Sometimes I feel like I could do better. Sometimes I feel the event could be better. But every single time I go, I have a ball.
Yeah.
So, and there's nothing else, unless you've done it, there's nothing else that quite compares to drifting. This technique, the variants and styles, the fact that there's no rules.
You can express yourself. It's an expressive sport.
You can.
Both in car styling and driving. So that's a fun part of it as well.
Yeah, but it is expensive.
But it isn't cheap. Yeah.
Any motorsport is not cheap.
No,
but
drifting really does feel like it takes the biscuit.
Yeah.
It doesn't at all.
It doesn't.
It's nothing compared to rallying and proper circuit racing. But
if we had this chat with someone that does time attack or whatever, I guarantee you it'd be as much, if not more.
It'd be more, I should think. Yeah.
But it is a bit of an expensive hobby.
It is fun though.
Sorry, Lucy. So that draws to a close the real cost of drifting. The real cost turns out is more than I'd hoped it was going to be.
And me.
So we're off to go and eat lots of food and cry in a corner. In the meantime, we hope you enjoyed it. You can follow us on Insta at idle.chat, on YouTube at idlechatpodcast, and our personal Instagrams are at AdamMS15 and Callum is at Callum_Pete.
Yep. This podcast is also now available on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts, so wherever your chosen preference is. And we'd love to hear your feedback.
Yeah.
Obviously, this is only our second one in. If you preferred the longer format, we can do a bit longer format. We're happy to chat.
Yeah, we went into more detail on this one. Yeah. We can go into even more detail, but we don't
want to make them too long and too tedious. We're not.
Yeah.
We're
Callum telling you the trigger wheel teeth is probably enough tediousness that you need.
Enough tedium for one evening. But so we're really keen to hear your feedback as well, because obviously we're new to this as much as you're new to listening to us. So if there's anything you want us to change, if there's topics you want us to talk about, if there's any sort of feedback at all, we're happy. We'd love to hear it, because it's only going to benefit us in the long term.
Yep.
So yeah.
And thus you.
And exactly. But thank you very much for listening to our waffling, and hopefully you'll return back again for some more. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
What do you call it? Is that a mid-level car?
I don't know what.
It's a bit spicy for a mid-level car, isn't it?
It's a smidge spicy.
It's a bit fruity for a mid-level car. But it's not a competition car either. It's not.
It doesn't know what it is.
No.
It's red.
It's a they-them.
And it has...
It's a they-them car.
My S15 identifies as they-them.
It's a gender-fluid drift car.
It has got a lot of fluids leaking out of it, which...
Yeah, some of them are my fault.
Yeah, I had a sump that Callum made.
Your fabricator mate to weld up for you. It turns out your fabricator mate's a bit shit.